Hey guys, so we're in the back room at Best Electric Bikes in Denver, and this is Zane.
How's it going, guys?
Dude, I appreciate your help because you just sold one of these bikes and we had to build another one to review.
Gotta build one more here.
It's pretty fantastic. This is the box it came in. It's a little bit shorter than other boxes, and it's kind of a small bike, right?
It is. It's actually a lot smaller than some of our others in size and weight there. So it's one of our lighter bikes, definitely more of that road style with these guys.
I'm excited to get out on it and wish you luck with the build.
Perfect, thank you.
Look at this view. Sunday afternoon, just chilling out, Mile High Stadium in the background. We're looking at the EcoMotion Tour E Road. It's a pretty awesome bike in a lot of ways, and it's kind of cheap in others. And they use some cheaper parts to keep the price down. So it's like $12.99 MSRP if you get it from a shop, which is kind of neat because then you can test ride this thing. They also seem to sell direct, and then it's like $14.50 on the website. Maybe that's to help cover free shipping or whatever. And then we've also got a Populo here. I wanted to compare and contrast the two because they're kind of similar. It's a value play. I like that this one has like a little reflective stripe on the tire. We don't have that over here, but we do have the deep dish rims. They tend to be a little bit stiffer and sturdier, but you do need to get those special long stem tubes, and that's a Presta valve right there. So if you get a flat tire on these, you might not be able to find those at Walmart or just a regular bike shop. So I would check Amazon or maybe a specialty shop when you get the bike, because unfortunately my experience has been that you can get flats a little bit easier with any of these narrower high pressure tires. So these are 28 by an inch and a half or 700 by 38C, and the pressure range is just a lot higher. It's like 50 to 85 psi. And that gives you real fast rolling efficiency. There's not as much drag, but there's also not as much comfort. And you can imagine, there's no suspension fork. We've got a generic saddle. I took it off. I looked all around. I couldn't find really any logos. I was assuming it was Velo because that's what I see everywhere else. So the seat post here, it's 30.4 millimeter diameter. You could replace that with like a Thudbuster, a Body Float, a Suntour NCX. There's just a ton of these seat post suspensions out there at different price points. And that might help to smooth out the ride a little bit. Again, just the higher pressure on those tires combined with thick 12-gauge spokes and the deep dish rims, it's sturdy, but it's just not as comfortable. And the stem is a little bit longer. It's like 100 millimeters. It's got a couple spacers, and it's in the up position right now. You could flip that and you could lower it to get even more aggressive, kind of like road bike if you wanted to. But I've got it in that upright position here because I want the comfort. I want to be able to spot things. I'm 5'9", okay, so I'm not super short. But even for me, this bike only comes in one frame size. It's like 19.75. I did all the measurements back at the site, standover height and everything for you, trying to help describe the feeling. Like it's more aggressive, and that's okay. Again, it's a lower price point. It's like 44.5 pounds. The battery is only like 5.5 pounds. So I love the way that they've tied it in. It's color matched. It looks beautiful. It's integrated into the frame. And then the hub motor, it's a 350 watt geared hub, which makes it smaller, lighter weight. It's a little bit zippy. It's a good choice for a bike like this to keep it lightweight, and it hides behind that cassette and the disc brake on the other side. We come over here to the Populo, very similar setup, maybe even the same motor, but there's no gears. It's just like a single speed. So starting is going to be a little bit slower, and then when you get up to 20, you might be like struggling to keep up a little bit and beating eggs. So I like that this one has a drivetrain, even though it's fairly cheap. Okay, this is just Shimano Turney Derailleur. It's got a 7-speed cassette, 14 to 28 tooth. Not a huge range, but hey, there's 7 speeds to work with. That helps you start and climb easier, especially if the battery runs out, or maybe just to keep up and not have to, again, beating eggs is how it's described, like spinning really fast, trying to keep up with the bike. 52 tooth chain ring in the front. It's got a little plastic guard, but there's no guide. I suppose the chain could bounce off. Maybe. I haven't had an issue with that. And you're probably not going to be on too bumpy terrain, or you're really going to be feeling it in your neck, your back, your shoulders, because this is more of a road bike. So I love that we've got this really long, smooth piece of tarmac here to test ride on, hit some of those speeds, show you what the motor sounds like. The cadence sensor on this bike is fairly basic. Okay, it's 5 magnets. That's really not a lot. In fact, there's like holes for adding more, but it seems like they just used 5. I counted them, and it's not as high precision, so it might take a little bit longer for pedaling to activate the cadence sensor, and then when you stop pedaling, it might keep going for a minute. It's just a little bit less precise. So thankfully, they have these awesome hydraulic disc brakes with motor inhibitors. So anytime you pull the brakes, it's going to send a signal to shut power off to the motor, whether you're using the half twist throttle or the cadence sensor. And then they've even got an on-off switch for that half grip twist throttle. So you don't have to worry about accidentally twisting that when you're bearing down on those grips. The grips are not locking. They can spin fairly easily. You see that? It's just a cheap grip. But that's a cheap, easy thing to replace and upgrade if you want to, if you need to. Coming back over to the Populo, there's no throttle, and the battery isn't integrated into the frame. I do like the way this frame looks. I like that it has these, bosses for maybe adding a rear rack and a front fender or something like that, but it uses linear pull brakes. Okay, so, coming back to those trade-offs, hydraulic disc brakes, that's awesome. The rotor size here it's smaller, 160 millimeter, but that's fine for a lightweight bike. It's a little bit more active. You're going to be able to adjust the reach on those levers. Unfortunately, I don't really know. I'm not familiar with this brand, XOD. It's probably a cheaper brand. You can just see that in the bike. This is a cheaper light. It has 7 little LEDs built in. It's nice that it's wired into the battery. There's a lot of cables and stuff going on up here, and these are not threaded. These are just like press fit connectors. They might be color coded. I didn't check that, unfortunately. You can see the wires even, it's down here right in the way of the tire maybe. A little bit of cable management would be nice. They just built this bike just for me because they sold their floor room model yesterday during an event. And I was like, oh, I really wanted to review that. I've been excited to check out EcoMotion for a while because I do feel like they're striking an excellent balance between affordability and then utility, and they're hitting the important things. You have gears, sweet. You have a throttle, awesome. You can even control the throttle. You've got a headlight, awesome. There's even a rear light. It's just cheap, it's 2 LEDs, but at least it comes with. It's using a couple of those coin batteries inside, so it's not running off the main battery. But the headlight is, and it is a little bit aimable. I just feel like they got a lot of things right. The hydraulic disc brakes. It's a nice bike. It balances really well. Yes, there's only one size, but check it out. They even got bottle cage bosses here on the bottom of that top tube. At first I was like, why didn't they put them there? And it's like, well, I think they should have them there and there, but at least they have some. And that battery, it's a lithium polymer versus a lot of other electric bikes I see might have lithium ion that might be a little bit more durable and less sensitive to temperature and getting a memory and stuff. I can't say for sure. I don't own this bike. I've just been test riding it. It's working well enough. I want to point out that the charging port over here is pretty close to that left crank arm, okay? So if you're charging it, you could get it snagged and you just wouldn't want to bend or break that off. Thankfully, the kickstand is positioned far enough out of the way that you can pedal backwards. Standard pro wheel cranks, cheap, not very cool Welgo cage style pedals. I just don't like these because they're not as big and they aren't as stiff, but look, it gets the job done. It keeps the bike lightweight. And then under this little door, there's also a full-size USB charging port. So again, given the proximity to that left crank arm, I'm not sure I would want to be charging something on the bike while riding. And if I did, I would use a right angle adapter, and then I would zip tie the wire to the frame. But then taking this battery off the bike, you're going to run into some issues there because you got to undo the cabling. It's not as convenient for use while riding, if you have a smartphone or something. This bike doesn't have any apps or anything fancy like that. For me, I guess the battery is more useful as a backup power source when it's off the bike. Okay, and you just insert the keys like this, turn it to the left, and then you pull up on the battery and see it kind of pops out to the side like that. I'm not going to do it because I don't know if I'll be able to get it back on with just one hand. But yes, it does come off, and then there we go. It kind of tightens in, and you pull the key out. It's got a little battery charge indicator built right in. Pretty standard stuff. I'm used to seeing very similar, but maybe not quite as integrated like this on such an affordable bike. Square tapered spindle. I can't say whether these are sealed headset or not. Looks like an 1.8" straight. I think this is 31.8 millimeter standard, mountain bike handlebar dimensions. And then coming up to the display. But before I get into that, I want to call out the shifting mechanism. Not my favorite. It's this huge Shimano SIS index shifter. Index meaning when you push this button or push that lever, it goes right to the gear. It's not like you're having to guess. Really old bikes, you actually had to kind of fine tune it. It gets the job done, but again, imagine your hands like this. It is not very convenient to put your thumb way up like that. So I like the triggers a lot better, but then this button would be in the way. So I understand why they did that, and it works well if you have gloves on or something. And again, it's better than having no gears, for me at least. So the display panel, we press this C button for a minute. I don't know what the C button means. A second ago, you probably saw like a ton of these little menu items pop up for a second. I took a photo of that and I'm showing you now. I don't know what they all stand for, but there's these little icons for like issues that the bike might be having. It's the motor, it's the controller, or whatever. So the EcoMotion folks, they pride themselves on like, yeah, you know, our display is fancier, it gives you feedback, or maybe it helps the shop to diagnose an issue. Possibly this lets you know in a faster way what the issue is versus guessing and checking. I don't work at a shop, but I hear sometimes from shops like, oh, it can just be a headache trying to diagnose an issue. So if you buy this bike online, it gets shipped to you, something's not right, maybe it's really handy to have that little readout on the display. And this is the first time I've ever seen this display. It's different. It's got the S+, S-. I don't know what the S stands for, maybe like select. And then maybe that's an O instead of a C. I don't really know. If you press it, it cycles from odometer to trip meter to voltage, current, and then like trip time, all down in the lower right quadrant. Top left, we've got like a little power meter, and that surges when you use the throttle or pedal assist. A battery infographic, and it's 6 ticks, so it's a little bit more precise. A lot of times I'll see 4 or 5 ticks, so, you know, another tick gives you more precision. That's nice. Down here, assist level, it always seems to start in like 1, and that's interesting. Like even with it off, completely off, I think the throttle still works. Yeah, so you can get throttle like only on this bike if you want to. And then back to this button here, turning it off is probably a good safety check if you're getting on and off the bike. You just don't want to bump that throttle and accidentally have it kind of take off and get a little bit unstable. Oh, interesting. So there's one of the icons. It shows the throttle is like maybe in the off position now. I'm gonna press it again and it goes away. Okay, cool. So that's one of the readouts. Speed in miles per hour in the top right. And then the other levels of assist, they go all the way up to 5. If you want to change from miles per hour to kilometers per hour, you hold the S+ and S-, and it goes into the menu, and you can change some other settings, and I'll put some information about that back at the full review. Here's the headlight button, so it's on right now. And there we go, we got those LEDs. Yeah, you know, I think it's more of a B scene than a focused like beam, but I can't test real well because it's bright out. And then there's a little horn. I don't know where it's coming from. It's like people will know not to hit you with their car, hopefully. And I think that's about it. Actually, there's walk mode if you hold the S- for a second. And that could be handy if you do get a flat tire and you're limping home. You could also use the throttle just gently for that. Oh boy. Man, so the walk mode didn't stop. Like I actually had to pull the brake lever to send that signal motor cutoff. And then I think if we hold S+ and C, it goes from like current speed to max speed to average speed. So yeah, there's a lot to this display, but no USB port. That would be something that might be cool to see in the future. I think that's about it. Again, just coming over here to the Populo, I like to have choices, and this bike looks really nice. It has the motor inhibitors. These are mechanical, and again, rim brakes. They give you good leverage, but they can get dirty and kind of scuff stuff into the rims versus this nice like pure black deep dish rim. See, this one has like black on part of it, but then silver on the other part. I think the geometry on this one is a little bit like shorter, so the reach might be shorter, and they have some more risers here, so it brings the handlebar up. And then you can see down here with the motor cable, they've got the quick disconnect, but there's no protector, there's no derailleur guard. So for me, that's a pretty cool little upgrade. It's just a steel thing. You can see it on some of the cheaper bikes because when they ship them in a box, you don't want the box to bang into the derailleur and mess it up, or that power cable right here. Yeah, it's really nice to have that. That's a little plus for me. Quick release on the front, so it might be easier to service that wheel if you do have an issue and need to true it or fix a flat. The rear, it's just always more work, especially with nuts and a hub motor like that. So I think enough said. I'm gonna hop on this thing and ride around the parking lot a little bit and try to give you guys an idea of how this bike is working. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if it came this way, but that nose is like really high, so it's a little bit uncomfortable. If you see me grimacing, it's not because I dislike the bike, it's because things are a little uncomfortable. Okay, so I'm in the highest level of assist right now. There we go. So it did take a second. Yeah, it cuts out faster than it starts. I'm surprised it definitely takes a minute to activate. You can hear a little bit of rattling going on. There we go. Feeling pretty steady. Yeah, tracking nicely. These bigger wheels, bigger tires, they give you a lower attack angle, so going over bumps and stuff isn't quite as uncomfortable as if you had, 26-inch wheels with very, very slim tires. But it's still, you definitely feel it. This bike's, it's just more aggressive and sporty. Okay guys, from here you can see the 350 watt motor. You got the 7 speeds in the rear, that nice Derailleur guard. There's more noise here, definitely, than the Populo, just because the chain's like out of alignment with if it's stretched kind of to the high gears as it is now, or the lower gears. There's just a little more ticking sounds, but it's working well. It's nice to have those gears. There's just more maintenance that's going to go into it, that's just the trade-off. That's why single speeds are so appealing sometimes. However, for climbing, for having those different cadences where it's just comfortable, I'm definitely a fan of this. So let's do it. I think the motor here is also a little bit more like, you can hear it a little bit more. That's not uncommon. Again, I wish I knew what brand it was. They just have their own branding here at EcoMotion, so I guess we will never know. I'm just gonna start off in assist level 5, and then later I'm gonna do the throttle to get up this hill. Feeling pretty good. We got up to 18 miles per hour there with me pedaling, and I could have pedaled harder, but I was trying to see, basically how powerful this motor is. So I think it's just kind of gets you up to about 20, and then there's more pedaling that goes into it. It's a little bit more active in general, and that's going to help extend the range too. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, we got the 52 tooth chainring, a little guard. It is just plastic, so if you run into a curb or something high-centered, it could crack, but it's better than nothing. Should keep your pants a little bit clean. I'm going to drive mostly on the sidewalks, but up and down a little bit. Listen for any vibration. It can be uncomfortable. I'm probably at a higher PSI tire pressure than is ideal because I'm lightweight, but again, back to the spokes, the deep dish rims. The bike is more sturdy than comfortable in this configuration. Struggling a bit at that hill back there. I tried to use throttle only, and we were going like 5-6 miles per hour. Again, I weigh 135 pounds, so it's not like the most rigorous climb, but again, the motor's more efficient than powerful here. Okay, so full blast with the throttle, 10 miles per hour, 12. It feels like it takes a minute to get all the way close to 20, if we can even get there. So the 350 watt motor, it's running off of a 36 volt, 10.4 amp hour battery, which is very average in terms of size. It's probably a little bit small in 2018. But that's part of what makes it lightweight and keeps the price down on this bike. And I wanted to point out the battery charger. This is actually pretty cool. It's 3 amp versus 2. It's relatively small and fairly lightweight, just 1.5 pounds. Okay, so we got Casey over there on the EcoMotion. I'm gonna hop on the Populo. Definitely a nice display on this one too. Just boot it up, get myself some extra assist, and I'll just follow you around. Struggling to get going. There we go. This one has sort of a more sealed, compact cadence sensor, probably with 12 magnets, so it starts a little faster, but without those gears, it still takes me a minute to pedal up to speed, chase them down. There's no throttle either. Nice, you got the headlight on. That's great. What do you think, man? You've ridden both of these now.
It's incredibly smooth. It does take a minute to get up to speed, but once it gets up to speed, it's comfortable.
I definitely like the Populo too. It's like really fluid, a little bit, it's just more responsive, the cadence sensor they've got. And I want to show you this thing up close because I didn't mention it as clearly before. So see where that is, and the wire's all tucked in and it's sealed and stuff. It responds a little bit quicker. But you don't have a throttle, so you really want it to respond, especially with only one gear. And the kickstand here, maybe not quite as nice. Sweet, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate the help.
You betcha. Anytime. It's my pleasure.
Hey guys, we're back in the shop and I wanted to show you the backlighting. This is what it looks like when it's a little bit darker. I think you can adjust the brightness level, but it might always be backlit. So if you're riding and it's dark out, that could be a little bit distracting. Again, to do the menu, you hold S+ and S-. EcoMotion has several bikes. They have a bunch of like fat tire bikes, and then this full suspension with the Bafang Max Drive. That looks pretty exciting too. Nice suspension fork and another light. So one of the things they kind of pride themselves on is all of their electric bikes, even the cheaper ones, have hydraulic brakes, so that you get that powerful stop and you get a little bit more control without having to use as much hand effort. And I think that's kind of neat. Nice. Well guys, I think that just about does it. It's always fun to look at bikes like this back to back and compare a little bit. I think both the Populo and the EcoMotion have something worth celebrating, and it's definitely nice to have those lower price points. For the full written review on this, all those other measurements and stuff, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Have fun, sound off if there's something I missed, or maybe you have another question. I'll try to help you out, and ride safe.